My wife said she was going to stay with her ex for a few weeks to help him recover, leaving our daughter behind. When she came back pregnant, I filed for divorce and walked away while she begged. I am 38, work as a regional sales manager for a medical supply company, and I live in a mid-sized city in Ohio. My job keeps me on the road 3 days a week visiting clinics and small hospitals, and the rest of the time I work from a home office in the spare bedroom. I make a steady income, not flashy but comfortable, enough that my wife has been able to work part-time since our daughter was born. My wife, Laura, is 35. We have been married for 9 years and together for 12. We have one daughter who is 6. We own our house jointly, and both names are on the mortgage. Until recently, I thought we were stable. Not perfect, but stable. Laura has always had a sharp personality. I used to call it direct. Over time, it felt more like she enjoyed picking at things. She would correct how I loaded the dishwasher, criticize how I spoke to her friends, and make small digs about my job not being as impressive as her college friends' husbands. I did not let it escalate. If she crossed a line, I told her once and moved on. I do not enjoy drawn-out arguments. About 3 months ago, she brought up her ex, Daniel. I knew about him. They dated in their 20s before we met. She described him as immature and unreliable. Suddenly, she was mentioning him weekly. He had moved back into town after a divorce. He was struggling. He was depressed. He had no one. The first time she said she might go help him, I assumed she meant drop off groceries or connect him with a therapist. Instead, she told me she was thinking of staying at his place for a couple of weeks to help him recover emotionally. That was her phrase. Help him recover. I asked why he needed her specifically. She said because I am the only one who understands him. She said it with that tight smile she uses when she thinks I am being stupid. I told her no. Not angrily. Just no. We are married. We have a child. If he needs support, we can find him resources. She rolled her eyes and said I was insecure. That was the first moment I realized something was already off, but I did not yet know how far it would go. She did not take the no well. Laura got cold and sarcastic in a way that makes you feel like you are being audited. She asked if I was going to forbid her from having friends next. She said Daniel was in a bad place and I should try being compassionate instead of controlling. The way she said controlling made it sound like she had been waiting to use it. I kept it simple. I told her I was not comfortable with her staying in another man's home, especially an ex, especially for weeks. I told her we have a child and routines and responsibilities. She laughed and said our daughter would survive without her for a little while, and that I was acting like she was leaving forever. That night she slept on the couch by choice, then made a big show of being exhausted in the morning. She told me I should think about what kind of husband I wanted to be. I said the kind that does not pretend obvious boundaries are optional. Over the next few days, she kept pushing, like she was trying to wear down my resistance. She would bring it up while I was making dinner, while I was helping our daughter with homework, while I was on a work call. When I asked her to stop ambushing me, she snapped that I should stop making everything about my feelings. Then she started dropping details that did not line up. Daniel had apparently hurt his back, then it was a surgery, then it was anxiety attacks, then it was that his apartment was a mess and he needed someone organized. Every version placed her as the only solution. She also started guarding her phone more. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. I asked if she had been talking to him a lot. She said of course, and why should that matter? When I said it matters because it feels like she is prioritizing him over our family, she told me I was being pathetic. She used that word, pathetic, in front of our daughter, like it was normal. That is when I told her if she leaves to stay with him, she is doing it as a separated woman, not as my wife. She stared at me for a long second, then smirked and said I am not going to blow up my life over a few weeks. 2 days later, she packed a suitcase. She packed like she was going on vacation. Not rushed, not emotional, methodical. 2 large suitcases, her laptop bag, a box of toiletries from the bathroom. Our daughter sat at the kitchen table coloring while this was happening, asking if mommy was going on a trip. Laura told her she was helping a friend who was sick and that grown-ups sometimes have important things to do. I asked her again, calmly, if she understood what she was choosing. She said I was being dramatic and that this was temporary. I reminded her what I had already said. If she walks out to stay with him, I will consider us separated. She rolled her eyes and said, fine, consider whatever you want. She actually said that while zipping her suitcase. There was no argument when she left. No yelling. She kissed our daughter on the head, barely looked at me, and walked out. That was it. The first week without her was strangely peaceful. Logistically, it was more work. I adjusted my travel schedule, pushed some client visits to virtual meetings, and asked my manager for a temporary reduction in overnight trips. He was understanding. My daughter and I settled into a routine. I handled school drop-offs and pickups, made dinner, did bath time. It was tiring but straightforward. Laura texted occasionally, not to ask about our daughter in detail, mostly to complain about Daniel. How messy he was. How ungrateful. How exhausted she felt. It was framed like she was sacrificing herself for some noble cause. There was never any acknowledgement that she had left her own child behind to do this. I asked once if she was coming home soon. She replied that I needed to stop pressuring her and that healing takes time. Healing? Like she was a therapist on a mission. By week 2, she stopped coming home at all, even for short visits. She had initially said she would spend weekends with us. That quietly disappeared. When I brought it up, she accused me of trying to guilt her. That was when I started documenting everything. Dates she left. Messages she sent. The fact that she voluntarily moved out. Not because I planned anything extreme, but because I could feel the ground shifting under me and I did not want to pretend it was stable anymore. Around week 3, the tone of her messages shifted. Less complaining about Daniel, more defensive explanations that I had not asked for. She would send paragraphs about how I never supported her emotionally the way Daniel did back when they were together. It was revisionist history. She used to describe him as unreliable and selfish. Now he was sensitive and misunderstood. I did not argue over text. I responded only about our daughter. School updates. Doctor appointment reminders. Photos from a Saturday at the park. If she tried to pivot the conversation back to how I failed her, I ignored it. I was not going to debate our marriage through a phone while she was living with her ex. At the end of the 3rd week, I asked directly if she had any intention of coming home. She called instead of texting. Her voice was tight, almost irritated. She said she needed more time. She said Daniel was having setbacks. She said I should appreciate how selfless she was being. I asked her one clear question. Are you in a romantic relationship with him? There was a long pause. Then she said, I cannot believe you would even ask me that. That was not an answer. I told her that from my perspective, a married woman living with her ex for nearly a month looks exactly like an affair. She snapped that if I had trusted her more, she would not feel pushed away. That logic did not land with me. I ended the call and contacted a family law attorney the next morning. Not to file immediately, but to understand my position. The lawyer confirmed that since she left voluntarily and our daughter remained with me full-time, that would matter. He advised me to maintain stability, avoid emotional messages, and not change locks or escalate unless she formally moved out. I did not tell Laura about the consultation. I wanted clarity before confrontation. By week 4, she had not spent a single night at home. Our daughter started asking when mommy was coming back. I told her I did not know. That was the first time I felt something close to anger instead of confusion. Not because she left me, because she left her child and framed it as compassion. She came back on a Tuesday afternoon without warning. I was home because I had blocked off the day for virtual meetings. Our daughter was still at school. I heard the front door unlock and assumed I had forgotten to deadbolt it after taking out the trash. Then Laura walked in with one suitcase and a tote bag, looking thinner and strangely self-satisfied. She did not hug me. She did not apologize. She set the suitcase down and said we need to talk. I told her to go ahead. She said things with Daniel had become complicated. She claimed he was emotionally unstable and leaning on her too much. She said she realized she had responsibilities here and that she was ready to come home and fix our marriage, as long as I stopped being controlling. I asked if she was still in contact with him. She said yes, but only to make sure he was okay. I asked again if they were involved physically. She got sharp immediately and told me my obsession with that question was pathetic. Then she said she had something else to tell me. She sat at the kitchen table like she was delivering routine news. She told me she had missed her period, that she had taken 2 tests, that they were positive. I did not interrupt. She said she was pregnant. Around 6 weeks. I asked one question. Is there any possibility this child is mine? She said the timing makes that unlikely. I counted backward in my head. We had not been intimate in over 2 months before she left. The math did not support even unlikely. I stood up. Not abruptly. Just done. I told her to pack her things back into the suitcase and leave. She blinked at me like she had misheard. I repeated it. You do not live here anymore. You left. You moved in with another man. You came back pregnant. This is not a discussion. She tried to pivot into outrage. She said I was overreacting. She said we are married and this is our home. I told her our home was the one she walked out of voluntarily. I reminded her that I had already told her if she left to stay with him, we were separated. She said she had nowhere to go. I said that was not my responsibility. Daniel was still in town. Her face shifted from irritation to panic. She asked what she was supposed to tell people. I said the truth would work fine. I opened the front door and waited. Not yelling, not threatening, just clear. For the first time since she walked back in, she looked uncertain. She did not move at first. She stood there in the middle of the living room like if she stalled long enough I would reconsider. Then she started talking fast. She said I was being cruel. She said I was abandoning her when she needed me most. She actually tried to frame this as me failing her during a crisis. I let her finish. Then I repeated that she needed to leave before our daughter got home from school. That is when she shifted tactics. She said I could not legally throw her out because her name is on the mortgage. That part was true. I told her I was not physically forcing her out. I was telling her she was not welcome to stay and that I would be filing for divorce immediately. If she wanted to contest occupancy, she could do that through lawyers. But she would not be sleeping here tonight. She stared at me, waiting for anger. I did not give it to her. I told her I would not expose our daughter to this situation. I would not allow a pregnant woman carrying another man's child to move back into our shared bedroom and pretend we are working through it. That is not confusion. That is disrespect. She said it was just a mistake. Just a mistake. I asked her how many nights of staying in another man's bed count as a mistake. She did not answer. I reminded her that I warned her before she left. I told her if she moved in with him, we were separated. She said she did not think I was serious. That was probably the most honest thing she had said. I told her seriousness does not require yelling. She finally grabbed the handle of her suitcase. Her voice softened in a way that felt rehearsed. She said we can figure this out. We have a child. We have history. Do not throw that away over pride. I told her this was not pride. This was consequence. She walked out. Not gracefully. Not dramatically. Just tight-faced and shaking. I locked the door behind her and immediately emailed my attorney to move forward with filing. I attached screenshots of her messages confirming she had been living elsewhere. When I picked up my daughter that afternoon, I did not mention anything. Routine first. Stability first. Laura started calling that evening. I did not answer. There was nothing left to clarify. The next morning, I called my attorney as soon as his office opened. I told him I wanted to proceed with filing immediately. No cooling-off period. No separation limbo. He asked if there had been any change in living arrangements. I explained that she had voluntarily left weeks ago, returned pregnant, and left again after I made it clear reconciliation was not an option. He said that simplified things. By noon, I had signed the initial paperwork electronically. We filed on grounds of adultery and abandonment, which in my state still carries weight when it comes to custody considerations. I requested primary physical custody since our daughter had been with me full-time for over a month already. I also requested that any communication go through attorneys moving forward. After that, I blocked Laura on everything except email. Phone number blocked. Social media blocked. Messaging apps blocked. I created a filter so her emails would go into a separate folder. I was not doing it to punish her. I was doing it to prevent constant emotional manipulation. If there was something relevant to our daughter, she could write it clearly and I would respond once per day. By mid-afternoon, she realized she was blocked. She sent 3 emails within an hour. The first one was angry. She accused me of humiliating her and making unilateral decisions. The second one shifted tone. She said she was scared and that Daniel was not offering the support she expected. The third one was strategic. She asked if I would at least consider staying legally married until the baby was born so things would look cleaner. That was the moment I knew there was no confusion left. She was thinking about appearances and logistics, not betrayal or repair. She wanted stability without accountability. I responded once. I told her she would be served officially within the week. I told her any further communication should focus strictly on scheduling time with our daughter and nothing else. I also informed her that until a custody agreement was in place, visits would be supervised in a neutral location. Not to punish her, but because her housing situation was unstable and I was not sending our child into that. She replied with one line. You are destroying this family. I did not respond. Because from my perspective, the destruction happened when she chose to move into another man's apartment and treat it like community service. She was served 3 days later at Daniel's apartment. I did not orchestrate that for drama. It was simply the address she was currently residing at, and that is where the process server went. According to the affidavit, Daniel answered the door. That detail reached me through my attorney, not through her. The email I received that night was unfiltered. She said I was vindictive. She said I had embarrassed her in front of Daniel and his neighbors. She said I could have at least warned her. I did not respond to any of that. The only thing I replied to was her question about seeing our daughter that weekend. I offered 2 hours on Saturday at a public park near our house. Daytime. Neutral ground. She pushed back immediately. She said it was degrading to supervise her like she was a criminal. I told her it was temporary until a formal custody agreement was in place and until she could demonstrate stable housing separate from Daniel. She did not deny she was still living with him. Saturday came. She arrived 10 minutes late wearing oversized sunglasses and acting like the world was watching. Our daughter ran to her, confused but excited. Laura cried loudly, kneeling in the grass like she had just returned from war. I stayed a few feet away and did not engage in theatrics. For the first 30 minutes, she focused on our daughter. Then she started drifting toward me, trying to start conversations about reconsidering the divorce. She said we were throwing away nearly a decade over one mistake. I reminded her calmly that moving in with an ex for over a month is not one mistake. It is a series of decisions. She lowered her voice and said the baby might not even be Daniel's. I looked at her and asked if she genuinely expected me to volunteer for a paternity test on a child conceived while she was living with another man. She did not answer directly. When the 2 hours were up, I said goodbye and left first. Clear boundaries. On Sunday, she emailed asking if I would at least attend an ultrasound appointment with her so we could discuss options like adults. I replied with one sentence. You should discuss options with the father. That was when the begging actually started. Up until then, she had rotated between anger and strategy. After I refused the ultrasound invitation, the tone shifted into something closer to panic. She sent a long email that night saying Daniel was not reacting the way she expected. He apparently had assumed she would terminate the pregnancy. When she told him she was unsure, he distanced himself. That was not my problem, but she was clearly hoping I would treat it like it was. She wrote that she made a mistake chasing closure with him. She said she thought helping him would prove she was a good person. She said she never intended to hurt our daughter. What she never said was that she regretted sleeping with him. The regret centered on consequences, not choices. I responded once, carefully. I told her I would not reconsider the divorce. I told her I would continue facilitating scheduled visits with our daughter as long as she behaved appropriately. I also told her that any further attempts to involve me in her pregnancy would be ignored. 2 days later, she showed up at the house unannounced. I was in the driveway washing my car. Our daughter was inside with my sister, who had come over for the afternoon. Laura walked up looking exhausted. No sunglasses this time. No performance. Just raw desperation. She said Daniel had asked her to move out. I told her that was between them. She started crying and said she had nowhere stable to go. She asked if she could at least stay in the guest room until she figured things out. She said we could keep things civil for our daughter. She said she would sign whatever post-nuptial agreement I wanted. I listened. Then I told her no. Not because I enjoyed saying it. Because allowing her back into the house would complicate custody, blur legal boundaries, and send a message to our daughter that actions do not carry weight. I had already consulted my attorney about this scenario. He advised against cohabitation once filing was underway. She accused me of lacking compassion. I told her compassion does not require self-sabotage. She asked if I still loved her. I told her that question was no longer relevant to my decisions. She stood there for a long moment, then asked what she was supposed to do. I said find an apartment. Contact family. Speak to Daniel. Hire her own attorney. But this house is not an option anymore. For the first time, she looked small instead of superior. Then she walked back to her car alone. The divorce moved faster than she expected. Once she retained her own attorney, the tone shifted from emotional appeals to negotiations. She requested joint physical custody at first, arguing that I was being punitive. My attorney responded with documentation. The dates she voluntarily left. The fact that our daughter had been living exclusively with me for over 2 months before filing. The pregnancy timeline. The unstable housing situation. That narrowed her position quickly. Within 6 weeks, we had a temporary order granting me primary physical custody and her scheduled visitation. She eventually rented a 1-bedroom apartment across town. Not with Daniel. He was out of the picture entirely by then. I did not ask for details. Financially, the split was straightforward. We sold the house and divided the equity. I moved into a smaller place closer to my daughter's school to minimize disruption. I adjusted my work travel permanently, trading some commission upside for predictability. Stability became the priority. Laura sent one last long email before the final hearing. She wrote that she never believed I would actually walk away. She said she thought I would cool off, that I would choose to protect the image of our family instead of dismantling it. She said she miscalculated how serious I was. That part was true. At the final hearing, she tried once more outside the courtroom. She said we could still stop this, that people recover from worse, that our daughter deserved two parents under one roof. I told her our daughter deserved at least one parent who meant what he said. The divorce was finalized without drama. The baby was born months later. Not mine. Daniel signed the paperwork eventually after a paternity test confirmed what everyone already knew. I do not hate Laura. I do not speak badly about her to our daughter. I show up to exchanges on time. I keep communication limited and factual. There is no revenge campaign, just distance. The strangest part is how calm it feels now. The chaos ended the moment I stopped debating reality and started acting on it. She assumed I would negotiate with disrespect. I did not.